Hello, and thank you for joining today's Environment and Energy Leader webinar titled From Carbon to ESG, How is Your Organization Staying Ahead? Sponsored by LRQA with guest speakers from NX, Marriott International, and Trane Technologies. My name is Jessica Hunt, and I'm the Director of Live Events for E&E Leader. Before I hand the presentation over to our speakers today, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties during today's event, please send a message to me via the Q&A widget, which is open right below your media player. If you are still having issues, I'm hopeful that I will be able to resolve those problems for you so that you can enjoy today's event. Joining us from LRQA today is Heather Moore, Supply Chain Technical Director for Sustainability. Heather will be moderating today's event. She has over 16 years of experience in the environmental field. Alongside Heather, we will have the pleasure of hearing from Nicholas Rodriguez, Corporate Environmental Health and Safety Security Manager at NX. Nicholas has spent the greater part of the past 14 years as a member or leader of the, member or leader of the risk management, environment, and safety teams for companies in the pulp and paper and oil and gas sector. From Marriott International, we have the pleasure of hearing from Brian Wickens. He is the Director of Energy for Data and Reporting. Brian has a background in applied physics, as well as energy engineering and data science. And last but not least, we will hear from David Occam, Director of Global Environmental Programs for Trane Technologies. Given that David has well over 3 decades of experience in environmental management, he is the subject matter expert for environmental laws and regulations affecting Trane Technologies' global operations. And now, before I hand it over to Heather, I just want to remind everybody that we are having a Q&A session in about 45 minutes. So please do your best to submit any questions that you have for the presenters while they are speaking today. If you have a question for a specific presenter, please indicate when you submit it. And if you are watching this presentation on demand, please submit questions as they will be forwarded to LRQA and then distributed to the appropriate speakers. And at this point, I am going to turn the presentation over to Heather, and I will rejoin everybody later on.
Thank you, Jessica. I am excited today to be joined by 3 of my colleagues and talking about my favorite topic, sustainability. So just a bit about LRQA. LRQA is a leading global assurance provider. We help our clients manage their risk for a more sustainable future. Here are LRQA's 5 pillars of sustainability. We're focusing on managing specific risks in each of these pillars for our clients. And now I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Hi, everyone. Brian Wickens. I'm the Director of Energy for Data and Reporting at Marriott International. I'm slightly new to this role, about 6 months, but I've been a member of the Marriott Energy Group for about 3.5 years. As some of you may know, Marriott's the world's largest hotel company. We have nearly 8,000 properties across 30 brands and 131 countries. We have in place a very robust sustainability and ESG reporting platform called Serve 360. Most of my work resides in the sustain quadrant of Serve 360, including energy, carbon, and water reporting. But we cover everything from investment in underserved communities, employee volunteerism, and human rights and trafficking prevention training. This is all reported publicly through our Serve 360 reports. One of the more recent developments to Serve 360 and our company as a whole is our commitment to science-based targets with a 1.5 degree C target, which we'll be committing to, or rather we'll be submitting for sometime in the summer, as well as a commitment to net zero 2050. And some of my major work has been around the continuing improvement of our data integrity, as well as automation of our reporting process both for rebaselining for SBT and net zero, as well as just continued improvements of tracking against those goals. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. And now on to David.
Hello, everybody. Heather, can you advance the slide for me? Or?
Oh, sure.
There we go. How about one more? And good day, everybody. So this is David Holcomb with Train Technologies. Just in case you're not aware, we are an HVAC manufacturing company and service organization, and we deliver heating and cooling products for commercial applications, for residential, and for transportation. You can see some of our brand names here at the bottom. If you go on to the next slide. So just to give a perspective, Train Technologies has been in the sustainability arena working hard for many years. We had a set of goals that were realized in 2020. We committed to a new set of requirements, and we, in fact, broadened our focus. We're looking at basically how to do right for people, how to do right for the planet. So, we've got a commitment around our products and their use and, by customers to reduce the energy requirements and the associated refrigerants. If some may or may not know, but refrigerants generally can have a very high global warming potential and are a big part of our sustainability focus on our direct emissions and our customers' emissions. So we've made a commitment to reduce the carbon associated with our products by a gigaton by 2030, starting at the 2019 baseline. And further, my role as the director for environmental programs, I really work in operations in the manufacturing service side. Ultimately, what we're driving towards is carbon neutral, zero waste to landfill, net water positive at stress locations, and a pretty tough reduction of our total energy consumption by 2030 versus that same 19 baseline. And lastly, we've got a lot of programs and go-gets around, opportunities for all, working around our communities, but big push on diversity and gender parity, certainly expectations around world-class safety for our manufacturing staff and our service technicians, and, all other things that relate to a better quality of life for our employees, for our communities, for our neighbors, for our stakeholders. So in general, it's a very important strategic business element for us. And, we've been partnering with Lois for a few years as they help us on our assurance of our ESG report and the numbers thereof. So, but thanks. I enjoyed talking to everybody today.
Thanks, David. And then last but not least, we have Nicolas for a brief introduction.
Thanks. Well, I'm Nicolas Rodriguez. I work in NX. We're based in Chile. NX is abbreviation in Spanish for National Energy Company. Our corporate offices are based in Chile, but we have also operations in the US and in Paraguay. We started as a company back in 2011 after buying Shell assets in Chile. Shell was operating in Chile since 1919, so it's been a long time here in Chile. And back in 2018, we bought Road Ranger in the US, and in 2019, we acquired 50% and started a joint venture in Paraguay. So we're mainly based in these three countries right now. We are mostly based in a retail area where we have several substations, over 400. We also have convenience stores in Chile, and the main markets are industrial fuels made for mining, asphalt, LPG, and also for aviation services. And lubricants, we use the Shell brand in Chile for the lubricants and for the service stations. In the US, you will see us as Road Ranger. We have travel centers across the US, and in Paraguay, we use our brand NX in the service stations. So it's easier to recognize us over there. So nice to be here today, and we'll talk a lot of something I also like a lot, which is climate change and sustainability. Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, thank you. As you can see, we have oil and gas, manufacturing, and hospitality, three very different industries, and it'll be interesting. I'm interested to hear how each of them are handling sustainability. But first, before we do that, we want to hear from everyone on the call. and we want to understand where you are with your organization within your sustainability journey. So take a moment here to answer. Either you're just starting, maybe you've done some measuring and reporting, but not quite yet, you're on your way, or you're confident, you measure, you report, and you verify all your data. So just give you 10 seconds here, do an answer, and then we want to see where you are in your journey. All right, so here are, it looks like the answers are coming in. So looks like most of them, we have some just starting, some on your way. That's excellent. And then 20% about already verifying data. So that's great. I think it's a great time to start these conversations with everyone. All right. So the way we're going to do this is we have 3 topics and we're going to talk through them. Our first topic is how, for the 3 participants here that we have, how is your organization sustainability journey progressing, or how did it start?
Yes, I'll start.
Who wants to take this? Great.
So I'm going to speak specifically to our, energy, carbon, and water data. We have obviously a number. I spoke about Surf 360, and there's, it's a lot more broad reporting, but, specific to energy, carbon, and water data, prior to 2016, really we had a number of sporadic sources from different bill pay providers and other third-party platforms. So what Marriott did was developed the MESH platform, which stands for Marriott Environmental Sustainability Hub. This is the corporate database of record for all energy, carbon, water data, and it began by setting up a number of data feeds from these existing sources into the MESH platform. Now, one thing that we tried to do to drive, compliance towards entering data in MESH is we leverage what's called our brand standard audit. These are a number of metrics and tasks and goals that the properties need to achieve in order to maintain their Marriott branding. So originally it started out as 4 points on this brand standard audit, and the only requirement was that you just needed access to the system. But recently, because of the extreme increase in requests for different sustainability data and our goals to improve data compliance and reporting, we've increased it from 4 to 16 points, and now we require full data compliance, full data completion for all properties. This includes all managed, all franchised properties globally. This is really going to help us in terms of improving our quarterly reporting. One of the big initiatives on our reporting process as well is I've been working to automate the process. So typically we've reported on a quarterly basis. The process can take about 8 weeks for us to gather all the data, format it, gap fill, all that work. But the goal now is to have a fully automated process where we take queries of our internal databases, and this will allow us to essentially run in real time not only the current reporting period, but potentially every previous reporting period as well, to track how we're doing against the goal. Another huge benefit of this is, science-based target allows us to restate our baseline. So as we've increased the requirements of our brand standard audit, we fully expect to see a huge increase in data. So to be able to restate our baseline over time through this automated process is going to be super beneficial for us.
That's great. So it sounds like Marriott's really, you're focused on data. There's a ton of data that you're having to process and figure out what to do with.
Absolutely. You can imagine, 8,000 properties. Each one may have a number of electric accounts, 3 or 4 different energy sources, 2 water sources, all the waste data that comes through, all the property attributes. It's massive.
It's a lot. Yeah. So I'm curious, and this could go to someone else, but how do you define sustainability? I mean, you mentioned energy, water, waste. What does sustainability mean to your organizations?
Heather, I can take that one, and maybe just step it back from a context of progression. But back in my earlier years of working in sustainability, and I was kind of chuckle at it really is like how to have a factory that could run on a feedstock that was renewable, like you could make paper from pine trees and plant your new trees every year or whatnot. But as I've watched kind of the interest in sustainability grow over time, the interest from our neighbors, from staff in the companies I've worked for, from the stockholders, from governments, NGOs. I mean, the scope of sustainability has grown larger and larger and larger. So, each organization has to define kind of its sort of, operating envelope, boundary conditions. As I said at the introduction, we've moved, from kind of an initial focus sort of on the standard, I'll call the environmental metrics into, many more things related to how we help people, how we, improve the quality of life for, parties that are economically disadvantaged or, climate disadvantaged, and it's, whether whatever your political views are, I certainly feel like something has changed, whether it's cyclic or human related, these last number of years. And, you hear stories about, increasing water levels and the ocean levels, I should say, that just this week. So, some of the things that we're trying to do with our business does help the challenges that the globe faces on sustainability. What we're trying to do with our communities is, positive impacts from the operations where we do, direct business, the hiring practices, pay rates, again, gender considerations, many pieces of this sustainability, puzzle all working together, and it's grown across so many different functions than what used to be. My personal focus again is I work in operations. I work, on the kind of the standard metrics, waste and water, energy and carbon. Also going to work on our compliance programs to make sure we meet all our legal duties. So with that, as you look towards what your company wants to do, it certainly needs to have, some benchmarking with similar industries, an awareness of what's coming from expectations of whoever your stakeholders are, buy-in from your executive leadership, certainly further sales and buy-in from the kind of the rank and file leadership and staff, and bring this together. But ultimately, it's a progression for everybody, and I'm glad to see that so many participants today have an interest in starting this journey, moving forward in time, having a maturity process in your programs, and work towards a common solution that I think is beneficial for everybody. And I'll close. My favorite point is back to, again, politics. Wherever you stand on things, I feel like we have a limited supply of fossil energy, right? And that affects so many pieces of the world. So we need to work better to protect those stores of energy, find other alternatives, and by doing that, we can deal with the concern about, carbon conditions in the climate and et cetera. So with that, define your scope, put together your milestones. It's going to take a few years for sure, but it's certainly an exciting program, and I hope all the companies are working hard to put processes in place, and of course relying on strong systems, valid data, and transparency. So, thanks, Heather.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so it sounds like your journey started focusing on environmental with the data, and then it really expanded to the community and your impact on the world, which is awesome.
We have an internal term that some folks may have. You might have had green teams and kind of factories in your past. Well, we're calling them these days the sustainability teams, and so internal messaging around we're all sustainability ambassadors. No matter what your role is, this has grown to so many functions that own a piece of sustainability in the broadest sense. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's not just the environmental folks anymore.
That's right.
That's great.
Thanks.
Okay. And I think part of this is as you've progressed with this sustainability journey, what have you learned in the process?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Well, I wanted to answer the poll too. We just starting. It's been a short journey so far. It's our first year after the verification process under the ISO 14064. We started with the newest version, the 2018 one, instead of the 2006, I'm sorry. And we are right now working on our carbon-related roadmap with the projects, initiatives that we will develop in order to have our goals in the long-term and short-term very well defined. We have learned a lot. We are part of the oil and gas sector, so we found an internal cultural resistance at the beginning. We've been working for 100 years or more in selling fossil fuels, so it's not easy to talk about climate change and carbon footprint here in this kind of companies. But it's something that the companies have managed to put into their strategy. So now it's part of our business strategy, and we are aligning all the business process in order to get the strategy. So we now are not thinking about trading fossil fuels only. We are trading our main scope to trade energy. So, and our name helps with that. I told you we're a national energy company, right? And that's our name. But it's something that has to come from the top, from the top management. The CEO, VPs has to be very aligned, and also their teams. And we are working in order to get them in the team, to get them in this long road. And all our business all our goals, the different areas have their own specific goals in order to reduce our emissions, to be more efficient, to develop new projects, to innovations and new products, to look for new products that are free of carbon. So it's something not easy in this kind of organizations. It's something that we want to make a very good work. So we have tried to work with the experts, and we need to support their support and checking on our roadmaps in order to help us to make the right decisions, to take the right roads. And that's why we work with LRQA in this verification process. And we want to be a company and start learning and keep learning in every process and every verification process. So it's been a long road. It's only a year, and our goals are going to be short-term and long-term. So it's going to be a lot of things that we want to keep learning.
Yeah, excellent. It sounds like it started with your leadership, though, with the policy changes. And then once the policies changed, then you had your kind of marching orders to go from there. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I think let's go on to the next question here, or the next topic. So now we kind of heard how you got to work today. How are you handling sustainability issues currently?
Heather, I think I'll jump in on this one. It maybe talk a bit about kind of tools and process, but ultimately our kind of again scope of we call the sustainability metrics has expanded over time, and of course we issue a ESG report every year. I forget how many years we've done that now, and the data that we generate not only feeds the annual report, but we also are DJSI, the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP. We get questionnaires from our customers on sustainability performance and other aspects. So clearly, and I think as Brian touched on this, you need a platform. And generally, there's multiple tools out in the marketplace. We're a company that utilizes the platform that's now called Benchmark ESG /Gen Suite. So they've been around for about 20 years. We've gone through a process. Gone through a process to.
David, I think we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mute went off as I coughed. Let me try again. I started to say that we follow the financial control definition for the sites included in our organization for reporting on ESG and within our Gen Suite tool. and recognize that the Train has, let's say round number 40 manufacturing sites around the globe, but we have hundreds of small, sales and service offices. So we do a lot of the service of our commercial equipment that we sell, but those locations are often in, kind of multi-tenant, kind of strip malls, and we don't have as much control over kind of the energy aspects and waste. And so, a context of using your tools and developing standards, again, look at how you want to capture your operations, your facilities. Again, we do the financial control method. Ultimately, we, have an annual cycle that rolls into our ESG reporting, but to make sure that we're ready for that, we have monthly reporting requirements for, again, a whole host of metrics that feed into ESG. And part of the program, as I sit on the corporate team, is to, do kind of layered audits and data oversight to the year, and be able to know that by year end, most of your data is correct, and it can be pretty hard. There's a lot of, moving parts in the data chain. There's a lot of challenges with the context of when you can get your data. We have a standard that, our locations, we're required to report for the particular metrics. You're obligated to provide the previous month's, numbers by the 5th of the current month. And, sometimes we get invoices that come in, a month after that. Some locations get a water bill once a year. Waste disposal records can be hard to extract out of your disposal partner's process. So, this is another piece into your program to how to manage your sustainability data generation system and platform is the timing of the standards, the frequency of data collection. And then another piece to that is we do about a third of our sites each year where we do a virtual data assurance check, and we get our location manager, kind of maybe the EH&S person that's responsible for loading the bulk of the sustainability data. And we go through their records, kind of with screen share, and we look at calculations, and we spot check values, and that again is a key step to be ready for the year end when you're going to partner up with LRQA to do your data assurance. Is make sure your data is ready and it's reasonably correct. So with that, we also have written what we call standard work, but policies and data standards for what metrics to capture for what type of locations, and the definitions of the elements within each metric, and guidance on how to do calculations. And that's published on our internal standard work library, our business operating system. And ultimately this ties into our context of performance and goals and progress reporting. And a new thing for us that, I kind of shared with Heather in our group here as we were planning this webinar, but we, for the first time in 2021, our carbon data is actually part of the executive compensation program. So now our sustainability is open to, our carbon aspect of sustainability is open to, Sarbanes-Oxley governance. And, that makes it even more exciting of the, how do you know your numbers are correct? Prove to a finance person that your scope 2 electricity market-based numbers adjusted for energy credits is valid. It's a chuckle, but, it's been an interesting process, and we found some opportunities to put additional control measures in for data validity, and we're going to work more now in 2022 to drive ownership of data kind of through the ranks. Up to this point, it's often been kind of, well, that's corporate's problem. They'll make sure the data is right. Well, we're asking basically for internal certifications on the SOX, carbon data, because there's only so much you can see sitting remote, looking at an operation in China or a factory in Spain or a location in Texas. And so with that, it's been certainly an evolution in our tool set, our standards, tie into goals and executive leadership requirements, and then making sure at the end of the day, our role is kind of a servant leader obligation to our reporting colleagues is helping them be successful. So they're trained, they know who to come to for questions. We can help them, collect data and things like that. So it's really, the old joke, it takes a village to have a good sustainability management program, and it's very true. It's a lot of hands, a lot of work, but ultimately, we feel really strong with our data. We're in the middle with our 21 assurance program right now. A few things that popped up that are new. I wasn't thinking that one, but it's just part of the process, continuing improvement, but overall, it's something that we can stand behind, and speak with confidence to our leadership in the external world on our sustainability performance. So, a very interesting program.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. Yeah. You mentioned sustainability now is basically everyone's role within your company, and that's huge in collecting the data. And I think now finally environmental and financial professionals are having to talk to each other, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So thinking about kind of current events, I know now it's 2022, the pandemic happened. Now it's been a couple of years. But did COVID and all those situations change any of your operations in the way that you had to look at sustainability?
Yeah, I think as hospitality, obviously we were, heavily impacted by the pandemic, and that's led to, a number of changes, obviously in our operations, but also in our reporting. One of the, we see a lot of the same things as, a number of other industries and reduced, energy, water consumption potentially, but specific to hospitality is the effect it's had on our reporting. The Sustainable Hospitality Alliance has written methodology for reporting of energy and water footprint, which they call the hotel carbon and water measurement initiatives. And these, as well as some of our internal reporting, is not necessarily based on conditioned space for intensities. It's based on occupied room nights for intensities. So properties which had, months of closures in 2022 or annual occupancies, down as low as 10% when they were, 80, 90% prior to the pandemic, they may be down 30, 40% on actual energy or water consumption, but on a per occupied room night basis, they could be double or triple that. So we've had to work with a number of different, a number of the reporting, a number of the organizations who receive our data have allowed us to use 2019 data as really the most recent credible data where possible. Obviously, that's not viable for properties which opened, 2020 or later, but it's really been a challenge. We had a number of tests in our validation on looking at year-over-year data for, verifying if the data looks accurate or for gap filling certain months from previous years. That's completely out the window. That test, probably won't come back forever at this point. There's just way too much fluctuation in usage and occupancy and things like that. So it's been a challenge to work around that, but I think it also gives us opportunities to look at what are the baseline, usages for energy, for water in our properties. We've run, previously try to run regression analyses to see how much does occupancy affect water usage, how much does heating and cooling and occupancy affect your heating degree days, cooling degree days, occupancy affect your energy usage. So we do have a little bit of an interesting opportunity with these, non-typical operations to, I think, get some cool insights, but overall, it's been a challenge to reconcile around that.
Yeah, that sounds like, I like how you turned it into an opportunity, and now sounds like you're looking at the whole building instead of the metrics, which may be beneficial to try to reduce your overall impact. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Now, what's next? I mean, I know, Nicholas, you talked about just getting verified using ISO 14064 Part 1. What's next for you? What do you see? What do you see right ahead of you now that you've gone through the verification?
Yeah, it's not the 1-year project, right? So we'll follow up verification processes and on a yearly basis, as everyone does. And we actually have a contract for 2 more years with LRQA. we were the first company with this version in Americas, verified by the LRQA, and it made us to have a more consistent inventory. We saw identified that this life cycle analysis is very useful in order to have our main emissions identified, and that's what we're working. I told you before, we're at the oil and gas sector, so it's easy to see the focus or where the main emissions are emitted.
Yeah.
So what's next? We are working in the long-term and the short-term goals. In the short terms, we already introduced them in the balanced scorecards of every VP and manager. So it's something that we want to work on. So, and we also are now working on communicating this verification process, the result inventory for our internal and external stakeholders, clients, suppliers, NGOs, neighbors, etc. And we will communicate also our roadmap and then our goals. So we will start verifying those in the short term.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of work cut out for you, but it's all positive. Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we move on? I think now we have another polling question for the audience. So I know you guys are still there. Nicholas just kind of introduced this topic. What's next? What's your biggest challenge for the future? So I know, what do we have here? We have support from leadership, uncertainty around the regulations and standards, measuring supply chain impacts, or working with the data. Too bad we don't have an option there for all of the above, but feel free to go ahead and show us you're listening. And we want to hear from you. What do you think is your biggest challenge for the future out of these 4 options? I'll give you about 10 seconds and then we'll look at the results. All right, let's see how it's coming in. Supply chain looks like it's the over 50% now. So yeah, I would say that we have a lot of clients looking at their supply chain and kind of figuring out how to handle that. That's a huge question. So excellent. All right, so now thank you for your responses. Let's go on to topic 3. So the 3 of us here, what are your challenges for the future?
Hey, Heather, David will go first. Again, for Train Technologies, we look at, the challenges for the future. One of the pieces in STEM reporting that we certainly have some, maturing to do is around Scope 3. Hopefully folks understand, Scope 1 is, basically fuel combustion for us, refrigerant losses. And Scope 2 is electricity, the indirect emissions from your power companies. And then Scope 3 is kind of everything else upstream and downstream of your business operation, your suppliers, your product transportation, your customer usage, all that good stuff. So we've been, again, pretty skinny on Scope 3, where we've really focused on what I'll call business travel, and that's something that we could easily extract our carbon perspective out of our, our external third parties sort of, travel partners. So we had, rental car details and, airplane, segments, and, there's emission factors, tied to all that. But in the last few years, we've, taken a big step, again, looking, downstream. And so I talked about our gigaton challenge and are working towards, a product line that will have a smaller carbon footprint. We've realized that near term, we have a lot of ideas for longer term, but ultimately, it's been a challenge to try to kind of put together what the benefits are. And I think one of the questions in the Q&A box is how we're measuring our customers, kind of carbon performance. And, I'm a nerd engineer, right? There are some, assumptions we have to make about the equipment that we're replacing in our our product consideration and the efficiencies, and but we've had a couple of different very strong consultants that have worked with us, and we've created a tool we call the product calculator, and we're looking at what the improvements are from that activity. And in fact, we're also looking at some of the service aspects of what we do for customers and how we're able to quantify improvements around their building, heating and control systems, some smart building design, and again, the maintenance and effective, optimal operation of the HVAC systems themselves. So again, our product calculator is something that's been worked on, and it'll go through some further iterations, but it's been a couple of year effort to come up with something that's reasonable and that we could basically share with our customers and kind of defend with our stakeholders. With that, there are still having to be some sort of simplifying assumptions. But as we look on the other side, kind of the supply chain that feeds us, that's another go get for Trane Technologies. We do have an understanding. We know what our customer partners are, but we have not fully put in the systems with our partners and suppliers. We've worked on some measurements. We're collecting data now as being a preferred supplier to Trane Technologies. You're obligated to provide kind of the wastewater, energy, those types of metrics into a piece of our Gen Suite platform, and we're making decisions on the procurement partners who are working on sustainability themselves, and some of the parts that we actually buy from partners come from multinational, very strong companies, and the other end of the spectrum we have mom and pop manufacturers that are struggling to kind of understand some of these things. So part of our work is we have done some outreach and just helping them begin to answer questions themselves of what is sustainability, and we're going to work through then kind of those partnerships to better characterize our scope 3 aspects that are upstream of our business operations, and work towards a broad documented and verifiable scope 3 from kind of soup to nuts in line with the global protocol. So again, we got work to do. It's a tough nut, but it's expected by our stakeholders, expected by our leadership, and it just takes time. But certainly a challenge for our future. But we're boldly going forward to try to solve that challenge and do better for everybody. So thanks.
Yeah. So it sounds like you agree with most folks on the call that supply chain is the biggest challenge. Supply chain is a huge bubble.
Yeah.
It means a lot of things.
We've been doing this a long time, and we're still struggling on what I'll call upstream supply chain.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
How about the other two?
Yeah.
On
Marriott's side, of course, we struggle with kind of trying to quantify scope 3, the supply chain, but for us as well, our franchised properties are reportable as scope 3. And while, the data may be more readily available in terms of, their scope 1 and 2 emissions count as Marriott's scope 3 emissions, we still have issues with, the data integrity from the franchise properties. That's partially going to be solved by the updates to the brand standard audits I spoke about. Hopefully the increased involvement will help us get that data, but a large fraction of our scope 3 franchise emissions are extrapolated in our GHG roll-up. So a lot of work around that for sure.
Yeah, more data for you.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, and franchises, you don't have any control, really. I guess you have limited control, but it's...
Yeah, and that's why the brand standard audit is so helpful to us, because that puts them right at risk of losing the brand if they don't meet those goals. So it's, there is some, I think, resistance because properties who have not been in the system, at all, because, there was no detriment to their property to not entering their data, are now realizing that, it's not just for us, but it's for all of the reporting channels that we send this data to downstream. And it's super critical to get that in.
That's true. Yeah. Because when I go into a Marriott, I don't know if it's a franchise or owned and operated, and it's the same to all the consumers.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. Yeah, Nicholas, for you, what do you, I mean, I know you kind of talked about it a little bit about next steps and you're just getting into it, but long term, what do you see as challenges of an energy company? You know, obviously energy is changing hugely.
Yes, well, and life cycle is something that's very important for us. We are distributors mainly of fossil fuels. Our emissions are mainly in the crude extraction, refining, and also the clients that when they use our products. So even at the B2C, B2B level. And that's something that we're working on. We're developing the products and initiatives in order to take those challenges. But these are the indirect ones, so it's not very easy. But we, as the energy sector, there's some things that we have to see and plan in time. We are developing, and we have to develop markets for the new carbon-free products, such as green hydrogen. You don't only have to have a EV chargers, electric vehicle chargers. You also have to have green-based electricity for these chargers in order to have a neutral emissions in those. So our goal is developing these new products to create these markets in order to have a carbon-free products and get into the and work on with our clients in order to use and to have products that be useful for both clients and us as companies.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So yeah, you're using sustainability to really change your company, develop new products, new business lines, maybe new kind of new businesses that you would move into.
It's part of the strategy right now. We don't sell only fuels. We sell energy. So now has to be a clean energy.
Yeah. And our demand for energy is not decreasing, so we need energy, and however we get it, we have to figure that out. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, all three of you. I think that covers all the topics that we wanted to cover today. So now we can open it up to some Q&A from the audience members.
Great, thank you. And I want to, thank all of today's presenters for the information that they've provided. I will tell you, I always know a good webinar when we get a ton of questions in, and we've had roughly 30 questions come in already. And I promise you, we are not going to have enough time to answer all of them. So Heather, I'm going to start with you actually, talking about ESG. Is ESG and financial metrics more relevant for certain sectors of industry?
Interesting question. Yeah, I think for any business, metrics, the leadership and everyone involved will want to see metrics, right? What do we mean by metrics? They could be KPIs about operations, about financial performance, about environmental performance. But I know investors are interested in those. Leadership is interested. That helps leadership make decisions. Non-governmental organizations are also interested in how your companies are performing. So definitely metrics are important for all businesses. Within the sustainability world and actually financial world, there's a term called materiality. And what metrics are important to what industry depends on the materiality and what's important to that industry. I know we have 3 different industries represented on this call. I think metrics would be different for each one, depending on what's material to their organization and to their industry.
Which completely makes sense. Obviously, depending on what industry you are in or you're a part of, it's going to play into the specific metrics that you need. Nicholas, I'm going to, as much as I would love to, elaborate on that question, I do want to try to get some more of our attendees' questions in today. So, Nicholas, what will be the new sustainable way for energy generation of the future?
I think I answered that before, but we see the energy sector is related into carbon-free products. We need to have carbon-free energy sources for energy demand, and it's growing, as Heather said. So we have to find ways to make it also attractive for our clients in order to go and charter cars with green electricity in order to create one or other products that are using right now. So thus, as a sector, we need to get free carbon energy sources available for our clients. And we need the clients to increase the demand in order to push us faster into this direction, because we need to have the clients happy, right?
Yeah.
Our goals, one of our goals is to be clients and have the customer in the center of our decisions.
Great, and thank you. Yes, I do know you asked that earlier. It was a question that came in from a couple other people, so I appreciate you rehashing and going through again the answer to that question. This one is a question actually for everybody, and I'm gonna pass it to Brian first, since he is in the travel industry with Marriott International. How do your organizations approach sustainability in terms of employee business travel and CO2 emissions?
So, one of the goals of our science-based target is to identify which of the Scope 3 emission categories we want to track, target, and reduce. And actually, employee-related travel is so small compared to the other Scope 3 emissions like capital equipment and supply chain, that it's actually not one of the ones that we're looking at significantly tracking. We do have the data for it, and we have the potential to track it, but it's such a small fraction that I believe at this point it's SBT allows you to identify the Scope 3 categories that are most effective for targeting, and it's not necessarily the employee-related travel is not a huge component of our goal.
Which makes sense that you don't need to really focus as much on that if it's not as high up on the list of for Scope 3. David and Nicholas, did you have anything to add?
I would certainly say for Scope 3, you've got to make some boundary conditions that you can chase after each year, and have some kind of goals on your data expansion and maturity that are aligned with the relationship that you have with your suppliers, right, and your awareness of what's behind them and the data chain on the carbon side. So it's something that again for us it's kind of a reset in our scope every few years as we try to further detail the Scope 3 from soup to nuts.
And thank you for that insight as well. Nicholas, did you want me to move on, or did you want to add to this?
I don't want to repeat my answer. Well,
no?
Because we are, as distributors of Scope 3 is the biggest one we have. So
yeah.
It's something that we are trying to manage with this project and innovations. But it's something that we are looking a lot, and we don't want to leave it behind. So it's something we're working very aligned with the Scope 1 direct emissions.
Yes, definitely. And I guess I have a piggyback to that question. Nicholas, what's been like the biggest challenge you think for your company and in aligning the Scope 3 emissions? What's one of the biggest challenges you guys have faced?
Well, it's a very big challenge to address them, because we sell carbon-based products. We sell fossil fuels, so LPG, diesel, and other fossil fuels that we sell are our main business. So we are working a lot aligned with our strategy. So I said that customer centricity is one of them, innovation and sustainability. And related to sustainability, our strategies addressing the CO2 emissions. So the climate change is part of one of this sustainability main topics. And that's how we are addressing and looking for new products. We have a new department that's looking for new products, clean products, new energies, and how to make more attractive these products for clients and the B2C and B2B level. So it's something that we're pushing to. We want to be leaders also in this kind of products, and it's something we're working on right now.
Which again is wonderful to hear. So thank you for sharing a little bit more with us. Heather, I'm going to throw this one to you because I know this is a question that it's come up in, I think, almost every webinar that deals with data and ESG. So how do you recommend that companies start their ESG journey if they have little or no data? Should they just focus on like a few metrics or one specific one depending on their industry? What advice do you have for them?
Sure, I can say that all of our clients have come to us with their basically 10 years ago, starting with their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. That's all, and they start with that, and then now they're just getting into Scope 3, or maybe they were doing Scope 3 business travel, but now they're actually looking at Scope 3. I would say that's a good place to start, but now also everyone's looking at materiality, and there's a lot of different resources that talk about what's material to your industry. And greenhouse gas emissions aren't necessarily the most material thing. So you need to measure, obviously you need to collect your data, track it, but also there's a lot of resources out there. Standards, TCFD or SASB standards that talk about, GRI standards talk about what's material to your organization. And you can, if you're just starting out, you don't have to start where most companies did 10 years ago. You can use the research that's been done and also start tracking your material metrics.
And Heather, David would like to add to that. I'm not doing any marketing, but I would strongly advise, hire a consultant, hire somebody like Lloyd's, learn from the wealth of experience that others have, kind of paved the road before you, and recognize that, collecting the data, whatever your metrics are within ESG reporting, it's a tough part of the process to get established, and you may have to depend on people that this is not their top priority. They have day jobs, and so you can get some coaching, get the materiality review, some guides on what makes sense for your company, where it's at on its, maturity path for ESG reporting, and put together like a multi-year project plan, and kind of, start it with reasonable kind of bites of the reporting apple before you try to kind of consume the whole thing and bog your team down. Because ultimately you need to get the support of the data collectors and reporters, and recognize, we still struggle. We've been doing this a lot of years, but, at least half our data is what I would call, human fingers data entry. We do have some automation, but there's still a lot of manual data work that goes to loading our platform to then have your metrics. So you don't want to overwhelm your team, work on a data process, and get someone to coach you just to, save time and not try to reinvent the wheel for your industry type.
Thank you, David, for that. And then
call you David.
Nicholas, I know you were about to say something at the beginning. Did you want to add anything else to what Heather and David have already said?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Brian, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Brian, I'm going to throw one last question to you before we wrap everything up today. And this is one I personally found pretty interesting. Brian, with your science-based targets, do you recalculate your baseline following the acquisitions of new hotels?
So the short answer to that is no. If we were not operating those properties in the baseline period, say 2019, for example, if they were acquired following that reporting period, they are not included. However, one of the biggest challenges we're going to face with science-based targets is that our goals for emissions reductions to meet 1.5 degrees C are not intensity-based. They're absolute reductions to our emissions. So every new property we have in the pipeline, every room we have in the pipeline is now an additional, emitter that we have to account for. So there's this balance between, profitability and expanding rooms in the pipeline, and also the fact that because it's an absolute reduction, we have to take account for all of that that's being generated. But as far as the baseline, no, if it's only for properties that were operating in that reporting period.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess as we wrap up today, I would, my question to all of you is, what changes, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in your specific industry over the last 10 to 15 years? And I know we're going to go over the top of the hour, so hopefully that's okay with everybody. But, what are some of the biggest changes? And then where do you see your industry going? Let's do, Heather, we'll start with you real quick, and then you can pass it off to Nicholas.
Sure. I would say, LRQA's industry is assurance, right? And 15 years ago, not that many people cared about their sustainability data or their non-financial data, and at least outside of a company. And now we see, it's like a tsunami of, I don't know if that's a good reference or not, but it's, everyone is interested, investors, leadership, NGOs, they want to see progress, and they understand that sustainability issues are business issues, and you're not, companies aren't going to keep up if they're not looking at this information and this data. So yeah, it's a huge change that I've seen.
Nicholas, did you want to give us a?
Yeah, of course. In our case, well, climate change is something big now, bigger than years ago, and everyone wants to know what the companies are doing about it. So it's something that everyone wants. Every company wants. Every company has it as a big risk, one of the critical risks in their risk management board. So the board is interested in what you are doing, and the top management too, CEOs, directors, clients, suppliers, everyone is very interested into this. So it's something that companies don't have to leave it behind. You have to address it and good timing. And this is now, I think, even COVID impacted and more people are interested in climate change and how, after being closed in their houses, apartments, everything changed. Everything that, I don't know, we saw pumas walking down the streets here in Chile. So it's something that we are feeling more, the nature, the weather, how it changes, and the climate change is something very important right now. And it's very important to have this kind of projects, this standards, and the help of LRQA is very good into this. So
thank you for that. Yes, and transparency is on everybody's minds these days, as a consumer and, the private sectors and stuff. So, Brian, I'm going to toss it to you, and then we'll close up with David.
Yeah, one of the things, I've seen become, important more recently is a property's ability to have sustainability data potentially impacting revenue for their property, with a number of companies out there making commitments to reduce their employee travel carbon footprint. The big four, I think each of them has made a commitment to that. When we get RFPs for business travel, they'll be asking, what is your carbon footprint? What sustainability initiatives do you have in place? Properties who don't have that data may be excluded from these corporate travel RFPs because they won't be able to track against their goals for some of these properties. So we've tried to communicate that out to the properties. Here's the revenue you have at risk. Here's how much these requesting companies have spent at your properties in previous years. And I think, that's the biggest way that we can drive data compliance is there's a financial risk. Make sure that you understand that.
Definitely. And, it's something that properties hopefully are really, really looking into and working with you and understanding all of the risks associated with not having the data available to them and to you guys. So David, let's close it up with you, and then I will end the event.
Great. Thanks. And just to say that the future that we see is ever-growing expectation around, again, sustainability, and with the many definitions and interpretations of what that means, depending on who's asking the question. And we got a lot of interest from our own employees, our staff. Just as Brian said, again, we do service work. We sell products to the government in the U.S. and other companies and government agencies around the world. And more we're getting questionnaires about sustainability, and maybe it used to be just kind of price and maybe safety metrics. It's so much further for us than it's ever been. And at the end of the day, the business analysts are asking about what we're doing. How are we protecting the organization from climate effects? That's kind of the inversion of this whole is. How are we understanding of what our business risks are related to climate change and the supply chain interruptions and natural disasters and things like that. That it all dovetails. So at the end of the day, my advice to anybody, whether you're way in your journey or just getting started, but you certainly, understand your stakeholders, understand your audience. How does your business service or product line, fit into the kind of the global picture of interested parties and data standards and materiality concerns, and work towards a program, because I've been trying to answer some of the Q&As that we've gone, but there was direct business value with all the good things we get out of sustainability. Any company that really is invested in this, your business is going to definitely benefit from sales, interest, awards, certifications, all these things. At the end of the day, whether you're private or public, your business will benefit. Recognize there are some aspects that are expensive. There's a question about the capital intensive industries. If you want to make a kind of a big step improvement on your carbon footprint, it can be really expensive. We struggle with that, and return on investment payback periods. But you can do some things without having to spend the major capital and be able to show the world that you have a program. And at the end of the day, your staff that wants to join your company will be interested in that. Your employees will be interested in that. They're there today. NGOs, communities, talking to your kids, all those things. So I think it's something we all need to pull together. And at the end of the day, I think it's business positive for everybody. So, but I appreciate your time to speak to the group today.
Yep. Truly invaluable advice, I think, from everybody on today's panel. Appreciate the fact that you guys have all talked about the highs and as well as the challenges that companies are facing, because no company is going to be able to do things perfectly, and it's great to hear some of these big companies that you guys work for talk about the challenges that you've faced. Again, this was, in case you were unaware, this was the second part of this 3-part series on sustainability. So please join us in April for the conclusion of this series. And you can watch this one as well as the first one on demand. This event will be available on demand within about 4 hours or so. So please feel free to come back, watch it again. If you have additional questions, you can submit in the survey, or you can submit at any other time as well. But I want to thank all of the presenters today for giving us your time this morning, this afternoon, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. And this concludes today's webinar.